how do we begin to understand racism? How do we begin to think about that? So racism has essentially been conceptually inflated and deflated, where we don't really know what it means all the time. And often people say things are racist. Um, w- I think it would be helpful to ask people to say, well, what exactly do you mean? Which is part of the reason we asked you guys to send us a definition. Often people believe they can argue for a colorblind society and say, if we don't see race or describe race in policy, then it can't be racist. What you should have, or what you may have read in the assigned chapter on racial formation, is that even there's a study where blind people actually can see race by the language in which we talk about things. So they can understand race, even though they've never actually seen a person with their own eyes. So clearly you cannot be colorblind. Like literally you can't be colorblind. Racism has also been conceptually deflated to the extent that racism has been reduced to specific acts of hate or hate speech, right? So, how should we understand racism today? So, one way that we think is really helpful and what we assign this rating for is to think about it with respect to racial projects. So, racial project, again, the organization and distribution of goods along racial lines, can be defined as racist if it creates and reproduces structures of domination based on racial significations, right? So even if the policy isn't racist, the actual policy on paper, if the informal policy disproportionately harms BIPOC folks, right, where they had a disproportionate service, then that policy or that practice or that act is in fact racist, right? And so when we restrict our definition of racism to individual intention, what we do is we tacitly encourage racist practices because all racist rules are not on the books. School segregation is the best way, I think, to begin to understand this. And we're going to talk more about that as we move forward in this class, especially. But if you look at how schools in the Northeast, particularly New York, are just as segregated now as they were at the passing of Brown versus Board of Education, even though there is no segregation rule on the books, that tells you, right, that we have to move past beyond policies. That we have to actually look at what's actually happening.